I'm Mark, and this is my YouTube channel where I talk about things that are of interest to me, things I discover, topics that I think others might be interested in. Today I wanted to talk about something pretty serious, and that's the role of suicide, and particularly for men. I've been quite shocked recently by the amount of alarming statistics coming out of pretty much any country you can imagine about suicide generally, but also particularly for men. Where I live in Australia, the last statistics that I saw, it was 3,200 people in 1 year committed suicide, and 3/4 of that, about 2,400, were men. So predominantly men are killing themselves, 3 to 1 compared to women. And I looked at the US, even more alarming statistics over there. The last statistics I read there was in 1 year, 49,000 men had killed themselves through suicide. So that's quite apart from other causes. This is just at their own hands. And I don't know about you, but when I read those statistics, the big numbers, I can't really kind of fathom it. It looks big, and I can't really appreciate the significance of it, because of those 49,000 individuals, every one of those statistics is a person. It's a man, it's a person with their own story, some sort of crisis, difficulties they're going through. So I wanted to have a conversation how we humanise some of these statistics and bring it home to people like us that are on YouTube, looking for ideas, people to connect with, reaching out sometimes at a time of crisis or distress. And I think that's the power of YouTube, is that while we hear the big statistics, when it shoots home to yourself or somebody close to you, it's very confronting. And I wanted to, I guess, raise this topic that's often a bit of a taboo, particularly amongst men. Being a man myself, in my own social settings, it's never a topic that's talked about. In my professional settings as a social worker and counsellor, absolutely. And I have had many clients who have struggled with that, as I have at different times in my life. So I wanted to create a space where this topic's okay to be talked about, including the comments or any other way you want to share your experience or your observations. But going back to this big number in the US of 49,000 people, I thought, what does that look like? And so I thought of the Yankee Stadium. It's a pretty big stadium, and looked up the capacity, and that sits 47,000 people. I'll show you a picture now. And so the 49,000 people couldn't sit in Yankee Stadium. That's how many people are killing themselves every year through suicide. And no matter what I could do, I couldn't find a photo that could actually cover all of the stadium in one photo. It's so big. So yeah, it really gave me a kind of insight into the gravity of what's going on. I don't have the answers about why so many men are choosing to take their life, but it is an increasing trend. I think for a lot of men who are maybe 40, 50, 60 plus, we've come through a lot of change in society. I was brought up, like I'm in my 60s, I was brought up with a fairly traditional family life situation. My father was a breadwinner, my mum was a stay-at-home mum. We had kids at home, and she tended to do a lot of the home care. And my dad brought in, the pay packet. Back then, it was actually cash money. Those times I don't think happen now. And they had to work as a team to try and make things come together. I don't know whether my dad ever struggled with suicide or mental health. But since those days, in the 60s, 70s, so much has gone on. Changes that men have either had to face because these things are happening around us and impacting on our lives, or we're choosing ourselves. So just talking about my own experience, going through school and further education and just having, friends and people around me, I've had to adjust my kind of conditioning, as I said, from a traditional family situation to the changing role that women want to have, in the workplace and in relationships and in families. And, sometimes I've been in big catch-up mode and not really, on a steep learning curve, I guess. And, the traditional idea of what it is to be a man has just radically changed. And although some men hold on to that, and that's their prerogative to be that type of male, we do live in a society that's changing and expectations are changing. And I don't think, my conclusion is that although I've had to adjust and be a bit more creative about how I show up as a man, I don't feel that I have lost the essence of what it is to be a man day to day in my family, with my family and friends. I still enjoy fixing things, helping people in a practical way. A lot of the jobs that I do around the house and others are sort of, stereotypical, quite still male-like. I'm the one who does the mowing. I'm the one who does, fixes the door, and, has a look at the car if it needs it. But what I've had to grow in myself over time is I guess more of that emotional world that I still struggle with, because it's not something that certainly my dad or my significant men in my life did well or knew how to navigate. But the more that I attempt to try and open that up, the more I've found it's part of the answer for me to manage my mental well-being, my emotional well-being, and not feel so isolated. As a male, I have many times felt very isolated socially. Even though I might have friends, I don't really feel like I'm having the conversations that I need to have. And maybe they're not either, which is kind of crazy that you could be spending time together and not really talking about the important things. And I must say that most of the time when that's happened, it's happened with female friends, female family members. But that doesn't mean that men can't deal with that. I just think it's brand new territory. It's Um, it can be a bit scary. Ideas of it's embarrassing, means you're weak. All these sort of things certainly go through my mind. And I think the whole world of emotions, I still have this reaction sometimes that, if you're feeling upset in your body, even emotional, crying, it could feel like you're just going to fall apart and you'll never be able to put yourself back together. And my experience has been usually when I've shared distress, anger, frustration, I've usually felt better in myself. I haven't felt like this kind of volcano ready to explode. And I think that that's what I've noticed with men who don't quite know where to turn, is that they can allow things to just boil up to a point where either they can lash out at others or lash out at themselves through, thinking about suicide and such like. It's a complex area. I'm going to put some phone numbers at the end of this, if you or anyone else you know needs help. There's some numbers there you can reach out to, at least in Australia and the US. And I'm sure elsewhere there'll be similar places to reach out to. But I was thinking about this video and what I was going to talk about, and one thing I've learned is that before ideas of suicide or even acting out, trying to kill yourself, come about, there are warning signs that I've learned in myself that are worth paying attention to and doing something about. So I guess they fall into two categories. One is situational, and one is my own kind of reactions. So the situational stuff, which I've talked about in other videos of, a big life change. So if you lose your job, you have some big financial pressures, your relationship breaks down, you've got ill health, or somebody close to you has got ill health. You lose a parent, anybody close to you. A big life change. Those times act as a kind of prompt to go, look, you really need to look after yourself during this because you've had a big hit. And sometimes we have, some of us, many hits in 1 year, and that's why it can be completely overwhelming. I remember 1 year for me, I had, my mum had a massive stroke, and she'd gone from, terribly independent, vibrant person to ending up having to be admitted into a nursing home. Huge change within no time at all. And the same week that had happened, that massive stroke, my wife said that she was leaving me. And the distress was so much for me during that time that I remember for at least a week, maybe it was 2 weeks, I could not speak. The emotions were so heavy on me that I just didn't have the words. Maybe it was a way to protect myself. Now, what did I do about that? Well, I reached out to friends. I talked about what was going on for me when I could talk, and also sought help through a counsellor and other support. And gradually over time, it wasn't like an overnight thing. Life felt like shit. I felt very isolated and distressed a lot of the time. But little by little, over weeks and a few months, I was able to carve out a new path for myself, because, two of my biggest people in my life, my mum and my wife, had just kind of vanished in a way. I mean, my mum hadn't vanished, but, she completely changed who she was in terms of her functioning and, what she could do. Yeah, so I found my way through that. It was really tough. I didn't know whether I'd make it through. Certainly suicide was something that went through my mind from time to time, but nothing in any significant way. Um, so yeah, keep in mind, I think, the two big things: big situational changes in your life and emotional reactions, or your reactions to things, and how those things marry up. Um, and you can see it playing out, but you can easily overlook them if you don't pay attention. So if you find your sleep patterns change, or your eating, or your behaviour to others, or your, absenteeism, or how you show up at work, all these things, I always use the metaphor a bit like a car. If a car's running smoothly, you're on the highway, no problems at all. Don't even need to think about it. But then, small things start to happen. Get a misfire here, bit of vibration through the steering wheel, struggling up hills. You get the idea. So as we kind of pay attention to our dashboard on our car and worry about, oh, am I going to make it to the next stop or make it home? We got to worry about ourselves. What's the warning signs that are going on around us in our own body and our lives that kind of say, gee, I might need to stop here and have a pit stop, or, look into something because it's not quite right. So that's what I wanted to raise, suicide in men. I think it's a really disturbing area, and I don't want that to happen to you or anyone you know. And if this has triggered any of those things, I apologise, but I did want it to raise this as a topic that I think the more we talk about it, the more we say, look, sometimes we don't have all the answers. We're not an island, but by acknowledging that and finding support at the right time, it doesn't mean that you're not a man. Doesn't mean you're not strong. I actually think it means the opposite, that you are wise enough to realise that, look, we can't possibly do everything on our own. It's just crazy. Just like I would never be able to, say, lift something really heavy from A to B, like a car motor on my own. I get help. That's the same thing here. But emotions are such new territory for us guys that it plays to all these stereotypes of weakness and all that sort of stuff, which is just rubbish. So I hope this has been helpful, and I really love to hear your comments and thoughts, and maybe suggestions that you found helpful when things have been really tough for you. So thanks for listening, and I'll include those numbers at the back at the end of this to should any of you need that, and I encourage you to reach out because what do they say? A problem shared is a problem halved. The last thing I should have mentioned earlier, there was a quote that I think is quite apt for the idea of suicide, and that is that, and this is where thinking can trip us up. When you're so distressed that you're thinking suicide's the answer, that it's actually a permanent solution to a temporary problem. What the mind does is plays tricks on us that the distress and emotions are so overwhelming that we just are drowning in it, that we feel like the only way out is this permanent solution of suicide. And it's just the way the mind tricks us into that because it's so overwhelmed. And the only way through it is to get help, to get support, and you'll soon find that it was just the way the mind was reacting to so much distress going on in your life. But I don't think it's possible for a lot of us to get through that unless we go, I'm drowning here, I'm struggling. It's at that point, and hopefully before, but if you get to that point, that's the time you've got to reach out and go, well, I need a hand. That's all right. It doesn't make me a bad person or that I can't cope or that I'm weak. It just means that at this time, I need a helping hand. And I hope that helps you if you ever go through this sort of period. Thanks. I'll see you next time.